Hello and welcome to the 17th. Oh, sugar, 1 second. Yes, hello and welcome to the 17th live stream of the Understanding Class Reading Group Series. Let me just check to see if I've got the right audio. Like Mike checked in. I have indeed. Okay, we've got the regular panel is back. We are doing it semi-regularly now. We're on the last leg of doing our reading groups. This is chapter 9 of, I think, 12. Today we have all the way from Utrecht, I think, in Holland, is Kyle. Kyle, how's it going?
Yeah, not bad. The trees are doing a number on me here, but I'm hanging in there.
Hang in. The old, what is it? What do they call it? Pollen stuff. What is it?
The pollen.
The Netherlands?
No, like what do you call it when you don't like the pollen? What's wrong with my brain?
When you don't have pollen.
When you don't like it.
Oh,
Allergic.
No, not allergies, but hay fever. There we go. Hay fever.
hay fever. Yeah, hay fever. Yeah. Hanging in there with the hay fever. That's right.
Yeah, we're going to say from now on that you're actually living in Poland. I think that's what we would say.
Yeah. Well, the thing about having to bike everywhere, like everybody's like, oh, like new urbanism, like bikes is so cool. And it's like, yeah, it is cool. But also, if you got hay fever and the only way you can get anywhere is biking, which causes you to breathe hard, it's kind of a bad time.
You need to get one of those electric bikes. They're only like
you know what, Tom? I actually do have one. I just wasn't allowed to bring my battery over because them's the rules. So I guess I could get a new battery. Yeah, but they're like thousands of dollars though.
Could you buy one? Could you buy one and sell it?
I guess I could. Yeah, maybe I could.
Or buy one and return it like 3 weeks later. And buy one
I don't think it works like that. No, I don't think it works like that.
Well, I think you'll find it.
So yeah, just like you buy a new engine for your car and take it back in a week. Yeah. I decided I didn't really want it.
No, it's just it's the wrong size. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
You have it in a 15. Yeah. And then we have all the way from Arizona, but not for too much longer, is Esri and Sophia. How's it going?
Yeah, that's right. It's going pretty good. We got this place packed up. We're going to do a big old road trip. About 5 years to the day from the last time I drove across the country, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so...
You're in Arizona 5 years?
No. I was in...
No.
But like 5 years
LA.
ago. I drove from California to the East Coast. That's the... Wow, I guess that was when I was doing Swamp Side. There's like 4 episodes in the middle, in like early Swamp Side where I'm not on, where they talk about Carl Schmitt, and at least 3 of the people in the conversation get brainworms, which
you can hear it happening in the episode.
Yes, you can, but I missed it, so I didn't get to
You didn't get infected.
I didn't get infected, I guess. Yeah.
What happened to them?
There's one immunity. That was terminal brainworms. They're infected with Nazi borderline personality disorder.
You see, there's
friends and there's enemies, and everything can be carved into friends and enemies, and that's a smart way of looking at
Tom,
the
you better not stop being my friend, Tom.
Yeah.
You are with me, or you are my enemy.
That's what I'm fucking...
That's Carl Schmitt. I believe in the words of Carl Schmitt.
No, Anakin Skywalker.
No, it's Carl Schmitt.
Darth Vader.
He's a Nazi jurist. Okay, he's
Darth Vader
is very important.
I'll have you know, Darth Vader is not a Nazi
20th
jurist.
century.
He is a leader of our government, and he deserves your respect.
He's a very important, thinker in the continental tradition. Way more important than I don't know, reading about trees or climate change or
other cucked bullshit.
Trying to make sense of the world. That's bullshit. You should be reading Nazi jurists. That's what Lenin would want you to do. Anyway.
Yeah. It reminds me of a scene in Father Ted. That's the famous comedy, Irish comedy done by the Turf. No, he's not even a Turf. He's what do you call a male Turf?
So regular phobe. Like,
yeah,
I think they're known as a phobe. Yeah.
What do you call your man? Is it Shin? The guy.
Shinji.
Oh. Father Ted. Who wrote Father Ted? Come on, he's really famous. He's like the most famous one in England.
Oh, fucking New Atheist guy?
No, Graham Linehan. Have you heard of Graham Linehan?
Vaguely, yeah. That sounds vaguely familiar.
No, not really. I know Father Ted.
This guy here, he was like, he wrote a lot of big comedy shows in sorry, I don't even have my screen shared. So, yeah. Anyway, people who are from the UK and Ireland will definitely know who I am. But there's a scene where he has like...
Why are you bothering to explain this?
Yeah. This is too much. I'm actually... There's no end to this story. So let's just fucking ignore it.
We'll have a British and Irish culture lesson after this.
Yes, well, this is the one here.
Class, more like understanding Turf Island.
Yeah.
You can't understand Turf Island. You can better understand the class structure of the world.
It's much easier, much more simple.
Well,
speaking of,
there are friends and there are enemies on Turf Island.
Yeah. The friends class are everyone who owns the land and can lend it out. The enemies are everyone who
is a transsexual
who rents the land. Sorry. Anyway,
are transsexuals banned from owning land? Is that a law?
What I'm saying is that in the United Kingdom, we need a law that hold on, I'm trying to figure out how to get some spiked online money.
That bans trans people from owning land. Is that what you're saying, Esri?
Well, no. Is that we need to replace the royal family with trans people so that they own all the land. And so basically, based on, I hear a lot that, you have to pay fealty to the trans rights movement. And I'm thinking that would be a pretty good idea because in Britain, you already have to pay fealty, right? But you have to pay them to some inbred people, right? Well,
right. Not true queens. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
pay to the true. They don't have the inbred problem, but that's not a problem. Okay, So if you're going to pay fealty to someone, right? I think it's the only way to make Britain work at this point.
Yeah,
we have to retain landed property, but have the British pay literal fealty to trans people instead of the metaphorical fealty that they take so much umbrage with. I think it would solve everything.
Have you seen this? I must show this to you here.
Like online money. Shit.
Yeah. Let's have a look at this. Let's see the screen here. Have you seen this one? This is the day around the coronation.
Oh God!
Oh my!
Wow!
Operation.
Hide the sausage. Have you seen his hands? Like they're so swollen.
This is something else.
Yeah, he has like swollen fingers, and they look like sausages. And
that was not what I thought. Okay, but
this is literally like a day or two before the coronation. Like one of the dailies in the UK had this as their headline.
Are going to be looking at his fingers as an intrusive thought during the coronation.
Right.
Is this like a Kaiser Wilhelm thing? Where he's really self-conscious about how one of his arms was longer than the other, or one of his hands was bigger than the other?
Oh man!
Have you seen? Oh God!
Wait, not here. Let me.
No, I think people are concerned about his blood pressure, probably. And King's not supposed. The new king
is supposed to look like he's gonna last for a little while.
Yeah,
not just
keel over from a heart attack immediately.
Yeah, it'd be a real Ratzinger situation. Well, I guess Ratzinger technically stepped down, but still, it was real awkward.
Yeah, the royals have already been through that. They've done that one before in the 20th century.
That's right. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm
Poppin'
just trying to.
Royal turns out to be a real Melankov. Just leader for like 6 months.
Let's see if this one will work.
Sad story.
No, it's not.
Play...
Tom, are you still on about the sausage fingers now?
Yeah, I am. I'm
we
trying
gonna
to get
do
like a
this?
picture for you, but I'm trying to get a picture
I
for you.
used to
But
watch Sausage Fingers
Tom.
at Newgrounds.
Yeah, we don't need to get into this, Tom. We could finish this recording.
Look,
we could
look at
understand
those
class,
hands.
Tom.
Oh, oh,
Look.
that's a dick finger.
Seriously, look at those.
That's not healthy.
No, your
I
blood
know.
It doesn't look very healthy.
supposed to
It
do
doesn't
that.
look very healthy. No.
No.
Oh, there we go. I don't know.
So we should be trying to get money from the star, not from Spike, is what you're saying. Is Tom, we should just cut to the chase. And if we're gonna be trash, we should just avoid all that stuff and just cut to the. You know what? I kind of agree with this.
Honestly-
I think it's a more ethical move.
Well, yeah, because we're fucking punching up at Royals.
At the you do it in like really horrible ways, but like
Who
at
cares?
the very least, it's
They're
not-
inhuman.
Well, yeah, I mean,
They're
this is
technically
how we
lizards.
think.
Yeah, which is inhuman. That is correct.
Yeah, but you can still say things that you regret to people who are inhuman, not because you said it at them, but because just you don't want to say those specific things. Everyone's looking at me like slurs don't exist, but that's all right.
Slurs don't exist for Royals.
Yeah.
I beg
Anyway,
to differ.
I won't
Anyway.
test that theory on air.
Too late. Okay.
Think about
Now,
Marx and you'll understand.
yeah, we get up some good quotes, some spicy quotes. Might get that Spike money then. Yeah. Dear God.
All right.
Have you seen there was like a conference in the UK called there's a wing of the Tories now are calling themselves the National Conservatives.
I did see
Have you
that.
seen this?
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, no, I saw
Yikes.
Really
yeah, I
dodge.
did see that.
And they have like this real asshole. Is it Craig Murray or something? He's like, I can't remember his name.
I don't know.
Something Murray. He's like one of these spectator types. And he is like, is it not Charles Murray? Something. He's like the worst. But he was saying like,
Charles
what
Murray is the belt
they were saying, well, yeah. What about the they were saying people talk about the minority, but what about majority rights? And you're like, oh, it's like so bad. And
what
somebody
about
asked them, like one of the journalists asked them, like, you know, like National Conservatives, that does evoke stuff like, you know, the Nazis, the National Socialists, and then one of them like made an off-color joke about it, and like, I mean, and talked about the Jews, and it was so bad. I mean,
yeah,
they're
well,
fucking
yeah.
They're like, oh, that
leaning
was the
all
point.
way.
Yeah, no, you
Yeah.
got it. Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
No, that's us.
Yeah. No, yeah, you got it. Yeah. Good work. Nice detective work. Like,
Christ.
hey, you know who was there? Nina Power. You know, who used to do the rounds on the left and is now
Who's Nina Power?
oh God. She's been around for like a while, and I'm gonna just say feminist.
Oh,
in
compact.
quotation marks.
Oh,
But
right,
yeah,
compact magazine.
she's
Yeah,
but
okay.
she's been on the left for decades. She was married to Alberto Toscano. Poor Alberto Toscano. And her and Toscano and Mark Fisher had a big influence on like the theory left 20 years ago or something. And yeah, she is now a pro-patriarchy woman thinker. What I don't know what to call that. Is there a name for like a theoretical pick-me like there is for feminists? You know? Yeah.
It's not a trad wife, but trad.
Well, yeah, it's like the trad wife theory. Like, well, trad wife is supposed to be for trans women, and it's just been appropriated by
Cis women always take the good stuff from us.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, the good stuff. That's okay because anyway.
My kid just came in with a jar of one of his farts and let it into the room. So there is that.
Well, that will freshen things up compared to what we were talking about.
Yeah, true.
Dear.
That child deserves a gold star.
The Order of Lemon.
Yeah.
A brown star. Okay, let's kick off. This week we're continuing talking about the Precariat and whether it's a class or not. Kyle, how do you feel about taking this first slide? I don't think we did this one last week, so let's just give it a quick go over in case we didn't.
Fair enough. Okay. The Precariat's place in class analysis. If we accept the idea that objectively definable material interests are a legitimate criteria for differentiating class locations, the next question becomes how to specify these interests with respect to the class structure of contemporary capitalism. This will help us answer the question of whether the precariat and the working class are distinct classes. For this task, it will be useful to use the game metaphor introduced in the discussion of the Gruski-Whedon model of microclasses. The objective material interests of any location in a capitalist system can be specified at the level of the game itself, at the level of the rules of the game, and as moves in the game. The level of the game itself. The Marxist question is this. How would the material interests of people differently located within capitalism be affected by a change of the game from capitalism to socialism? Some reject the idea of socialism as a viable alternative to capitalism, or argue that it is possible almost everyone would be worse off, and so there is no class differentiation within capitalism at the level of the game. This means that all class locations have shared material interests against socialism. Probably those national conservative types you were talking about, Tom. Given the obvious complexity of modern class structures, how can we clearly specify the interests of people located within the existing economic structure with respect to an alternative as abstract as socialism? Solving this problem has been the central preoccupation of Wright's work on class. Wright has proposed the concept of, quote, contradictory locations within class relations as a way of connecting the complexity of class structures within capitalism to the alternative of socialism. The basic idea is to identify a series of locations within the class relations of capitalism that were in some sense simultaneously dominated and dominating, or exploiting and exploited. In the present context, this implies that with respect to material interests defined in terms of the games of capitalism versus socialism, such locations have contradictory interests, interests pointing in opposite directions.
Yeah, like one thing I think that like they kind of leave out in this analysis of just contradictory interests, or these contradictory locations within class relations, is just kind of like the idea of risk. Like there's a huge risk associated with trying to go to a new mode of production, as in you might get yourself killed, or your house could get burnt down, or you could have to go fight in a war, or any one of many very negative things that could happen to people. And this is a major obstacle to a revolutionary movement. It seems to me why revolutionary movements are actually attached to war so much is that like all the bad shit has nearly happened to some extent, and people just say, well, let's have something else. What do people think? It does seem to be quite missing from the book, as far as I can see.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it doesn't quite fit into this question of dominated, dominating, or exploited, exploiting and exploited, because you can simply lose out in absolute terms outside of the relationship, I guess? Question mark?
I suppose it's close to that second point there about like all class. That it's possible almost everybody would be worse off. You know.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah, but I think that it's subtly different, right? Because the point there is that everyone would be worse off under socialism, and not that everyone would be worse off as a result of the transition to socialism, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, which is so. This is, of course, discussed in later chapters, and we'll get into what Wright thinks about socialism versus the transition to socialism, and what the game theory of that is. But I think it's fair to say that he's trying to position the contradictory class location jargon as as a reason why that like people can have sort of conflicting interests but like overall have a sort of like overall have like a location and like it within like a complex economy, and it doesn't shake out into the binary very easily all the time. It's like not that helpful, and it's also like, look, I used to be a Maoist, okay, like, but it is a necessary like concept if you're gonna have some kind of like essentially two binaries of class relation of some sort. Like you have to be like, yeah, reality is also really complex and shit at some point. So I'm not really sure. I think Wright is like starting to answer the people that think it's possible everyone would be worse off in socialism. Like this is the beginning of his answer.
Yeah, fair enough.
Does anybody want to hear the car registration number plate I saw today? I managed to take a photo of it, but it was kind of obscured. There was a bird shit on the windscreen when I was driving. But
I'm not sure.
There was a car in front of me. There was a car in front of me today that had the number plate X88 Mao. So that's like X Heil Hitler Mao. Like I don't know if it's random. Like who's coming up with that crazy?
That doesn't sound random.
No.
Well, we can note that I think it was as of today, the last opposition party in Hong Kong was finally disbanded.
Wow.
The progressive bourgeoisie, the liberal bourgeoisie party gave up in the face of police brutality. Or I don't know, probably not brutality against them so much as just the impossibility of doing anything.
Standing against the proletarian dictatorship.
Yeah, I mean that would be one way to describe it, I guess.
Yeah,
it's clearly the most scientifically correct way, comrade.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, the glorious socialist future will be delivered by police brutality.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep, same as it ever was.
I'm starting to understand why Mao and HH are on the same plate.
HH, yeah.
I'm sorry, 88.
88, yes. X88 space
difference.
MA0. That was what it was. Yeah. Okay, next slide. I'll take this one then. The level of the rules of the game. The problem of class interests concerns which set of rules governing capitalism are optimal for different locations within capitalism, given capitalism is the game. Are the American, Dutch, Danish, or Chinese rules superior for manual industrial workers? What about the highly educated workers like doctors or engineers? Do different rules of the capitalist game confer particular advantages or disadvantages on people in different locations within the system? These questions can be asked for the large-scale variations in the rules of of capitalism. Example: neoliberal / social democracy welfare state, and for second-order variations in the rules. The point is, we can define material. What does it mean there? The second-order variation in the rules. It's just smaller. Okay, yeah. The point is, we can define material interests and thus the nature of the locations of people in a class structure with respect to such variations in the rules of capitalism, and not simply over the game of capitalism itself. Okay, so we've kind of hit this stuff before, haven't we? There's no point really going any further into it, is there?
Yeah,
I don't think so.
I don't think the screen changed. We're looking at the same slide. So is that the same for you?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, same for me. Yep.
Sorry. Okay, just give me a second here. I'm going to. StreamYard is just.
No problem. Just looking
it's
out.
doing some weird shit, you know? Okay, let's see what goes on here. It's trying to like grab, like for some reason it when it takes the screen it won't update. Let's see here now. Okay. Right, can you see that?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Let me close this other one then here now. Okay. Okay. So and Esri, how do you feel about doing then this one, the level of moves in the game?
Yeah, let's do it. Okay. Just a moment.
Did you materialize from what was it, like
Yeah, from a
away
transport.
team transporter?
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent.
That wasn't like an alert or something. That was definitely what it sounded like. All right. So the Precariat's place in class analysis, the level of moves in the game. The problem of class interests concern the optimal strategies people face in securing and improving their material interests, given that the rules themselves cannot be changed. The problem each person faces in their own specific position is this. In terms of my material interests, what should I do, given that I am in my current position? Should I try to move into a different kind of position, become a different kind of player? Should I get more training to improve my bargaining position in my current location? Should I join with other people like me in collective action for mutual improvement? And if so, who are the other people like me for this task? Using this metaphor of capitalism as a game, we can turn to the question of whether the Precariat is a distinct class from the working class. Just how different are the material interests of people in the Precariat and in the working class with respect to the game itself, the rules of the game, and moves within the existing game.
Okay. So let's just keep going. I think we're going to get to the more meaty stuff. We've discussed these moves.
Just setting it up.
Yeah, setting her up. Okay. Should take this one. Keep going, Esri.
Sure. At the level of the game itself, the Precariat and the working class clearly occupy the same position, the same location within the class structure. The material conditions of people in both locations would be enhanced in a socialist economy. However, since the collective struggle for such an alternative is not presently on the political horizon, class divisions at the level of the rules of the game and moves in the game may be more immediately relevant to the question, is the Precariat a class? In terms of rules of the game, it is certainly clear that under the existing rules, neoliberal capitalism, the material conditions of life of most people in all three segments of the Precariat are worse than most people in the working class. But this does mean that the changes in the rules of the game that would be significant.
Sorry. Yeah, but does this mean?
But does this mean that the changes in the rules of the game that would significantly improve conditions for the Precariat would adversely affect the material conditions of the working class? And are there changes in the rules that would benefit the working class but would worsen conditions for the Precariat? Are they on the same side of the fence or on opposite sides? Standing proposes the Precariat Charter, which includes 29 articles, demands for improving the conditions of the Precariat. These are all solid progressive proposals that would make a tremendous difference in the lives of people in the Precariat. But these proposals do not go against the material interests of the working class, and nearly all of them would significantly advance the interests of workers. This is not true for everyone in capitalism. Standing's plutocratic elite would certainly lose out if these reforms were enacted. The same would be true for much of the salariat, especially for the well-paid segments of the corporate hierarchy. They would also interfere with some of the advantages of the professions. If we use the 19 articles of the Precariat Charter as a diagnostic test of class locations with respect to rules of the game, the Precariat and the working class are parts of the same class.
Do you want to have a let's read out? I'll read out a few of these. Precariat's Charter.
Sure.
Article 1: redefine work as productive and reproductive activity. Not sure what that means. Reform labor statistics.
I do. I mean, I know what it means. So, reproductive activity is stuff that.
Oh yes, sorry.
Is usually left out of the circuits of productive value, but is actually essential for producing value in the economy.
Right.
Different economists have different ways of constructing what production actually is. But yeah.
Yeah, sorry, no, I was thinking of like reproduction and just like reproducing the economy in the general sense, but not in paying women for childcare, etc., etc. Okay, reform labor statistics, make recruitment practices brief encounters, bizarre, regulate flexible labor, promote associational freedom, reconstruct occupational communities, that's Articles 6 through 10. Articles 11 through 15 are stop class-based migration policy. Stuff like this. Stop demonizing the disabled. Stop workfare now. Decommodify education. Make a bonfire of subsidies. Move towards a basic income, etc., etc. So
the common deliberative democracies. Remarginalize charities, which I thought is the...
yeah, fuck a charity.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not even joking.
They need to be remarginalized, according to our article. What is
pretty
remarginalized charities?
I guess stop relying on nonprofits to fill the gaps left by the state.
Yeah, it's been sort of like a Tory social engineering hobby horse to fill social service niches with charities wherever they can. So I think it's just maybe we don't need those actually.
Specifically, faith-based charities. Catholics have a belief in, some more politically minded Catholics, will have debates around whether justice can be accomplished through charity or through some kind of socialism or social democracy, for instance.
I think what you're thinking of, Kyle, is the big society, no?
I am thinking of the big society. It was like a David Cameron thing, right?
Yeah, super large. The big society entailed cutting people's benefits and letting the disabled die. That's essentially
huge. That's a huge society.
Very big.
The size of that society.
Wait, didn't David Cameron fuck a pig?
He fucked a pig. Yeah,
he did also fuck a pig. Yeah.
Well, that's a terrible thing to call his wife, in fairness.
Hey. Wait, is that pig the big society?
The Pig Society?
The Pig Society.
Yes, it was.
Does David Cameron get horny watching The Wall? All right, I'm done.
You gotta...
Have you seen that episode of Black, whatever it's called? What's that?
No, but we all know about that episode of Black Mirror because there was that tweet about that episode of Black Mirror. And someone watching it in, the good old days was just like, it would be wild if David Cameron fucked a pig, wouldn't it?
Oh, yeah.
And then all of a sudden it started blowing up. And there's a new tweet response. Why is everyone retweeting this? has David Cameron. Fuck the pig.
It's very funny. You should watch it. It's actually really good, that episode. A lot of the Black Mirror ones I didn't like too much, but that one was goddamn hilarious. Nothing like a bit of bestiality to make me laugh. Now, going on the previous slide, so basically they're making the case
You're
essentially essentially is that like the precariat and the working class have the same essential class interests, so they are essentially a part of the same class. That's what that previous slide is saying. Is that correct?
This is a better argument than I remember it being.
Yeah, that's
all
right.
right? So let's go to the back of his book about the precariat being a separate class and look at all the things that are good for the precariat. All right, well, let's say we do all this stuff. Does the proletariat have antagonistic interests or basically the same? Well, if we did all this stuff in the back of the precariat charter, in the back of the book about this new class, does it hurt them? Does it hurt the greater proletariat, or does it help them? Or not even the greater proletariat, but the quote working class, quote, as defined in the book. And no, it pretty much helped them. So they kind of have aligned interests, I guess.
Let me just put on my
pretty good argument. No, I think that's a pretty good argument.
Let me just put on my dumb bimbo hat and also my devil's advocate hat. Two hats.
Is it not the same hat? No.
They are, but we don't want to talk about that.
No way. Like there's a certain type of person that doesn't need to play devil's advocate.
That is a bimbo. That's true.
And they're much better than the devil's advocate.
Yes, the devil's advocate hat is worse than the bimbo hat, but I'm putting on both.
What would the devil's bimbo hat look like?
Oh, you have to pay extra for that.
I don't know if we can.
Okay. That OnlyFans? Is that OnlyFans?
That's OnlyFans. Yeah.
Shit.
So, why does it matter if the precariat and the working class have aligned interests or not? Couldn't the precariat just be a separate class that has similar interests to the working class?
So couldn't the precariat have similar interests and be something different?
Yes.
But I think that would mean that they're like the way he's defining class, as in their interests, material interests align, is that they're in the same class. You know, if there are no differences, is that not what he's saying? Like if the precariat and the working class, as they define it, had exactly the same material interests in all these different directions, they're essentially just two components of the same class.
Well, he does also.
You know, you could say left-handed workers and right-handed workers, right? And define them as classes, but you would then say, well, they align in all these different things, so essentially they're the same thing. They're all the same part of the same class.
Right. It's a needless division.
No, but there's a much more powerful. There's much more powerful. I mean, first of all, no, there's nothing about having interests that go the same direction that make you exactly the same class. But also in the book, there's a bunch of stuff that helps the nominal working class, which doesn't help the precariat and locks them out of employment. And that's the whole reason the book exists.
I see. So
fair point. Yeah.
So perhaps there is a case to be made that either it's like a subclass or maybe it is a different class, is what based on what you just said, Esri.
There's totally a case to be made. Like, you could say it's like a labor aristocracy thing.
Okay. Yeah.
And that having a union as it's actually, like a privilege essentially. And
or check your privilege, unionized workers.
It's not a joke here.
No, I know some people think this way.
No, but I'm just saying, like, this is, it's a live way of doing things. And I guess maybe this is why I thought this argument was like, okay, like, but is that it doesn't actually totally address like a fundamental relations of production thing as much as it could. I think even on a level of relations of production or something, like if you have some sort of like legal guarantee, then you have a kind of a bigger political economic advantage. In some respect, like I think it's kind of undeniable. I don't know. So if people that's kind of like I would have preferred, that kind of differentiation on the level of relations of production and all that kind of shit. Because I'm not sure like this totally defeats the argument, but it is kind of a fun argument to just go to the back of the book, be like, yeah, if we did this, it does still help the working class. It doesn't cut against them like it would with the Salariat or the Proficients or the,
elite plutocrats.
yeah, like Octopus Elite or whatever he calls it in the book. Sorry.
The globalists.
So, yeah, it does kind of, yeah.
It reads like that, yeah.
Yeah.
Don't
But,
talk to the globalists, God damn it.
But
Yeah.
but okay, so maybe to kind of punch up, or maybe not even punch up, but zero in the counter argument. Maybe it's better to say that what Wright accomplishes in this chapter is not completely taking down Standing's argument, but rather maybe like cutting it down a little bit, saying that, well, there's so much overlap between the interests of the Precariat and the working class that something like focusing them as like a distinct class may or may not be true, but it's not. They're not. Their interests are so aligned that they'd be better off working together, even if the working class, as defined in Standing's book, does have some advantages over the Precariat. Because this book, what's interesting about Standing's book is that there is this kind of phenomena of workers who have like a union or just like have like a good stable income and employment versus a lot of people who just don't have that, who go from job to job, who are very precarious. I personally don't think that constitutes a separate class, but there is something to that difference. Living on both sides of that, myself.
Oh yeah, well, it's a huge difference. It's just like, but yeah, I think we went over last time how much this concept of this way of carving things up is overly historical, like overly invested in our sort of like historical understanding of what the working class was and how people in the Precariat now aren't the working class, because the working class is when you have like a union and there's like a big world war and you have to stop the Nazis, and like it's not actually like
No.
Capitalism is so much older than that, and like the historical working class is more like the Precariat, where it's all atomized and kind of fucked and doesn't have its own institutions most of the time.
Right.
It just is. It's so much more like that most of the time. And I guess what Eric Olin, right, achieves here is the old Marxist maneuver of, sorry, snowflake, there are two genders, proletariat and bourgeoisie. Like, with class analysis, this is
It's so true, though.
This is the Marxist go-to move, and Wright is basically saying, like, when it comes down to it, what's okay, maybe what's good for the working class, narrowly constructed in this labor aristocratic kind of sense, is not good for the Precariat, but what's good for the Precariat is good for the working class, narrowly constructed. And because of that, they're basically on the same side of the fence. It's very literally like a binary reductionist argument. They're on the same side of the fence.
Right.
Right? Like,
Right.
Well, perhaps to sharpen our analysis a little bit, like there may be more than two classes, more than the two genders, perhaps. But there are poles around which their interests are more or less aligned.
Right.
And they're better off working together on each side of those near those poles, or on each side of those fences.
What
because
class?
like hang on, Tom. Like, because like Wright does not say that the interests of the Salariat and the interests of the sorry, what was the other one? The Proficients do coincide with the precariat and the quote unquote working class in that neatly binary way, right? He doesn't make that argument. He doesn't say that those are actually identical as well.
Right.
No, not at all. Like, and if anything, in his discussion of the Precariat Charter, they would sort of be on the
Opposite side.
They have enough like labor aristocratic elements to actually be on the other side, which is kind of a stark set of claims.
What class is slime mold in? This is the key
Slime
question.
Mold. Slime mode is in a contradictory class location. Next question.
It's in 600 classes. Okay, Sophia, let's read this slide because I think this kind of sums up some of the stuff we've just been talking about.
All right. The Precariat's place in class analysis. The diagnosis becomes somewhat more complicated when we ask if there are other significant changes in the rules of the game that would advance the interests of most people in the working class, but would be harmful for the Precariat. For example, would changes to employment law that would increase job protections for workers by making it harder for workers to be laid off have the side effect of harming the Precariat? Would legal changes in the U.S. that would make unionization easier by rejecting the anti-union strategies of employers harm the Precariat? There are some ambiguities here. These types of rule changes could have the effect of deepening the dualism in the labor market and making it harder for those in the Precariat to move into more stable jobs. It is also possible, depending on the details of such changes, that they could increase the number of precarious jobs relative to stable jobs.
You want to try that clause again?
That they could increase the number of precarious jobs relative to stable jobs. These ambiguities are a basis for considering the Precariat to be a distinct segment of the working class at the level of the rules of the game. Different segments of a class share the same general interests over the optimal rules of the game within capitalism, but differ in the relative priority of potential changes in the existing rules and may have opposing interests over specific rules in certain historical contexts. Another possibility is to argue that these tensions between the Precariat segment of the working class and some of the rest of the working class reflect a specific kind of contradictory location within class relations in 21st century capitalism. The idea here would be that those workers who still actually have enforceable rights to their jobs, the most secure, if dwindling, part of the working class, have a kind of limited property right that normally is associated with owning the means of production. The right to fire an employee. They can quit, but they cannot be fired. In this way of framing the problem, much of the Precariat is firmly in the working class, while the most securely protected workers occupy a privileged contradictory class location. It kind of solves that.
Yeah.
Right. So he's defining them like as a segment due to like the fact that they only differ in the specific rules of the game with respect to their material interests.
They differ in how they would prioritize moves in the game, right? They have different rankings of preferences relative to each other, even though overall they share the same class interest.
But he also says may have opposing interests over specific rules in certain historical contexts as well, Kyle.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Enough with this neoclassical preference, fucking ordinal preferences. I have to read enough of this shit for the calculation debate.
He does try to bring it in there. It was in there.
It does. It is. It's part of how he thinks. Definitely. I mean, this also makes sense of what's being said. I don't know if there's really an argument against splitting this off into its own class. You know, like, here's another way of making sense of it. This is a little, you know, if you want to, if your intuition is to have fewer classes rather than more, why don't you just fold these two in?
Yeah, well, I think the thing is, like, if you look at this, like you were saying, from the like relations of production perspective, it would be quite hard to make the argument that they are different classes. But again,
Yeah,
that's not
right.
the approach he takes in this chapter.
Right.
Right. I just kind of really dislike the idea of calling like this privileged sector of the working class. I just kind of despise that way of muddying the general relations in society, you know?
Yeah, but you can't talk about this book's ideas without trying to represent that somehow. Like, yeah.
Right, but you know, you could call it like the, you know, unionized working class, or, you know, the privileged sector, or something that's not just the working class. Because in reality, like, if you look at back to the time when Marx is writing Capital and all that kind of stuff, like, the vast majority would have been in the precarious, right?
Right, yeah.
They weren't unionized or anything.
Whatever the precariat is in, you know, the 19th century, because it's supposed to be this highly historicized category, and I don't know, like, I just, yeah.
Yeah,
the
I don't know.
equivalent.
Yeah.
I don't know if I agree with the Precariat framing per se, but I think we need to talk about this distinction between more secure workers and less secure. And the more secure workers in reality is the more historicized segment of the working class. That wasn't around before. That came around, and now the unique situation we're in now is that is being dwindled away. That's the unique thing, not the Precariat. They've been around since forever.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right on. Kyle, do you want to take this final slide?
All right. So, I was just making sure that I was on the right slide, but we're good now. So, what about class locations defined with respect to moves in the game? Perhaps the Precariat and the working class could be considered distinct classes, if thought of as microclasses, as proposed by Gruski and Whedon, when class is specified exclusively in terms of the optimal moves to realize material interests under the existing rules of the game. Two problems arise with this proposal. The first, the working class itself ceases to be, quote, a class if we restrict the specification of class to moves in the game. The interests of workers located in different sectors and occupations can easily diverge sufficiently to create lines of demarcation so long as interests are defined with respect to moves in the game rather than rules of the game. Number two, the Precariat itself is internally divided into distinct categories at this level of analysis, as Standing himself acknowledges. What we are left with then is that the Precariat is either a part of the working class, if class is analyzed in terms of the basic rules of the game in 21st century capitalism, or it is itself an aggregation of several distinct class locations, if class is defined narrowly in terms of homogeneous interests defined by moves in the game. The Precariat, as a rapidly growing segment of the working class and the bearer of the sharpest grievances against capitalism, may have a particularly important role to play in struggles over the rules of capitalism and over capitalism itself, but it is not a class in its own right. If class analysis is to help us develop a coherent, consistent way of theoretically understanding social cleavages and the possibilities of transformation, the concepts we use should have precise meanings that illuminate the nature of shared and conflicting interests and potential collective capacities. For these purposes, treating the Precariat as a class obscures more than it clarifies.
So what do people think about that? Do you think this is the correct way to go about defining a class?
I mean, this isn't exactly how microclasses was used before. It'd be more like bundles of microclasses, right? Like, because microclasses are sort of at the professional level, right?
But like,
Yeah,
isn't
well,
this just like a very
Occupational level.
specific? This is like a very specific definition of microclasses
I guess so.
that is like peculiar to Gruski and Whedon.
Okay. Yeah, right. The optimal moves to realize interest in the existing rules of the game. That's right. That's right. That's right.
Yeah, so like that seems quite dodgy because like you would like there's that issue as he says that like you kind of get to like an of sort of like bad infinity of class division
Right.
where you could like Zeno's paradox your classes down to infinitely small class identities.
Yeah.
But also it seems like it would be really like problematic over time because like your classes would probably be like more chaotically composed than like would be recognizable to the people in the classes, right? Like it wouldn't be they'd be class definitions that would only be of interest to economists, I think, as opposed to like even like sociologists or just people trying to make sense of what's the power distribution in the society. Like it feels like it would be something done purely out of a kind of like um obsession with like this methodology more so than like something useful.
Yeah. I guess he's trying to just not dismiss it out of hand. Does seem like a stretch.
Yeah, so like the previous definition that we had in the previous slide differed from this because it was about what? Like sort of like the idea that there are class interests over time as opposed to like purely like an optimization problem of like what is the best next move.
Yeah,
Is that kind of the difference? Because it sounds like Wright is saying that this is a different definition than the one we saw in the last slide.
Yeah, I think it is, and I think it's about this is more of an observation problem, whereas before, like, let's talk about class interests as far as like changing the game or changing the rules of the game.
Well, this is also about the moves in the game, rules of the game distinction. Were we also in the game metaphor last time?
We were, yeah.
Yeah, we were, but it was about the rules, and this is purely about the moves.
Yeah, this is purely about the moves. Yeah.
Right. Oh, okay. I get it now.
Yeah,
where it's
that
like
helps,
you don't take changing the rules to be a move in the game. It's just these are the rules, they exist. Within that constraint, what is your optimal solution? Okay, got it.
Categorization based on moves rather than rules. Yeah.
Okay. Are we happy with we've shoveled the Precariat into its proper place? Anything outstanding for us to discuss about the Precariat? I found this one of the least interesting chapters in the entire book, I must say. What were people's generals?
There's some like theoretically interesting questions that this is related to. The specific question of the Precariat is maybe like not nominally like interesting, but like it is like generally kind of an interesting thought. Like, you know, given the political role that workers' movements had in the 20th century, isn't there like a sort of broader layer of the proletariat whose interests that went underrepresented in the 20th century labor movement? I think it's a fascinating, really important question about what Marx probably was hoping the proletariat would mean, rather than what it turned out to mean. So it's like really like right next to and related to a very important question. It's just, you know, maybe not the most penetrating analysis I've seen of it.
Yeah, the problem with this chapter isn't so much the problem that the Precariat theory is trying to solve, but rather focusing on the Precariat theory itself. It's just of its time, and it's not something you see people talk about much anymore. I don't see, at least.
Because there have been unionization movements in the Precariat.
Yes.
No, it's true. And so like what
that's kind of like the working class a little bit.
Right, and so like where are they? Are the Starbucks workers who like just formed a union, like are they now working class?
Well,
like,
I mean, I guess this, you know, would Starbucks workers have always been working class in this framework because they have like.
Is that stable
benefits or
employment?
something? I don't know.
Employment? I don't. Yeah.
Why not? Let's ask X88 MAO MA0.
Oh, that
Your
guy
opinion.
thinks that everyone in this country is, in all the countries we are in, are all
Starbucks baristas are petty bourgeoisie.
Yeah, they're all PB.
Yeah.
They
Are
deserve
belong
to
to
be
us.
shot.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think we honestly need to have like a long discussion about like whether Starbucks baristas or like have stable employment, because like
Yeah, no, that's fair.
they definitely don't. Like your hours
I wouldn't
as a
say
Starbucks barista are completely at the whim of your manager, and they do all kinds of bullshit to screw with you over that. So I think they're definitely like in the precariat as it's defined here.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm just putting it forward that like
But they'll pay for your school.
that's I don't know, that's a discussion online. Like it's like a really loud, bad one.
Listen, if you have blue hair and work at a coffee shop, you get the
you-
wall. That's it.
No, you can't be a worker
Right.
because you're culturally different. Like you're the wrong kind of worker.
You're the
Yeah.
ruling class. Essentially, you're the ruling class if you got blue hair. That's
That's
what I've
it's
learned
class
from.
analysis. It's color analysis.
Right.
So,
It's the globalists and the blue hair people. They rule the world. That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
is that how we achieve communism? Is everybody gets blue hair and then class domination no longer exists? Only color domination exists?
Yeah, but not skin color, hair color.
Would there be domination?
Yeah,
if
it's
everybody had the
voluntary.
same hair color, though. It would just be there would be no domination. There'd be uni.
Well, yeah, you would always have the option. You would always have the option to like retain your natural hair color, which would put you as an oppressed person, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be insane.
Listen, the barista at Starbucks refused to have sex with me. She's oppressing me.
Yeah, probably
That sounded too real, Sophie. That sounded like a true life story.
I mean, that probably is a psychosexual root of a bunch of this like weird barista punching online, even though they're like one of the only sectors that's like, hey, we used to not have a union and now we do.
No.
And then you have all these quote workerists that are like, no, this doesn't count.
Listen.
Like, why doesn't that count? What? Like, what? No, why isn't like a workerist happy that there's unionization? Like, there must be some deranged psychosexual root. I think you're right about that.
Listen.
I'm not going to vouch for whatever you're about to say. Just look on your face.
I'll vouch for it. Sophie,
Listen.
I'll vouch for it.
Thank you. What I'm about to say is this. Workers are people who align themselves with racists
Okay, yeah.
to kill all the women at the Starbucks who refuse to have sex with me and get my name wrong in my cup.
Okay, and thanks for coming. We'll see you next week.
I told you. I told you. That was putrid.
Okay,
I'm
well, we
dead.
finished it. It was a quick one. We finished it in an hour. We said we would. Let's get out of here, and let's say
Yeah,
thanks
let's switch
to
out.
the chat. It's just myself and Alex in there. We actually had a
Yeah.
few people watching, but we'll see, but most of them are probably the feds, and the Chinese at this stage. We've got to be thinking the Chinese are watching stuff too. They got our names. Okay.
What about the Israeli far right? That's to blame for all of the far right movements throughout the world.
There's
Well-
that, and then there's the Chinese like Communist Party people who are brainwashed are going to call us all settlers.
You got to cut like the last 5 minutes of this.
Well, no, this is going on this is going on
Patrons only.
the
feed.
patrons only fash feed. Okay.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye. I'm eating myself out of this conversation. Bye.